A young black girl sends a desperate SOS at a rest stop, but a former Marine notices and takes immediate action. What happens next will leave you speechless, and let us know where you're watching from. It was a scorching summer afternoon at a remote rest stop on the highway near Oklahoma City, the kind of place where travelers stretch their legs, grab a soda, and hurry back on the road. Among the travelers was Jack Monroe, a former Marine in his mid-40s. Jack wasn't the type to miss details. Years of service had trained him to notice what most people ignored. His sharp blue eyes scanned the lot as he sipped his coffee from a styrofoam cup. He was on his way to visit family but had stopped for a quick break. That's when he saw her. A young black girl, maybe 12 or 13 years old, sat stiffly on a bench near the vending machines. She wore a bright yellow t-shirt and jeans, her braids tied neatly with pink beads. She wasn't moving much, her hands resting awkwardly on her lap. Next to her stood a white man, mid-50s, with a weathered baseball cap and sunglasses. His body language was casual, too casual, and he kept glancing around like he was nervous. Something didn't sit right with Jack. At first, he tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just a father and daughter stopping for a rest. But the more he watched, the stranger it seemed. The girl barely moved or spoke, and the man kept shifting his weight, tugging at his cap. Jack's instincts kicked in. Something was off. Jack decided to walk past them, pretending to toss his coffee cup into the trash nearby. As he got closer, the girl lifted her hand slightly, brushing her hair back. That's when Jack noticed it. A faint motion, almost imperceptible but deliberate. She was tapping her fingers against her leg in a rhythmic pattern. SOS. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. It was the universal distress signal, and she was sending it quietly, almost as if she was afraid to be caught. He didn't react immediately. Years of experience taught him to stay calm under pressure. Instead, he casually walked back to his truck, pretending to check his phone. From there, he kept the man and the girl in his peripheral vision, carefully observing. The man spoke to the girl, but she didn't respond. He grabbed her arm lightly, as if urging her to stand, but she hesitated. Jack clenched his fists. He had seen enough. This wasn't just a gut feeling anymore. This was a call to action. Jack glanced around, quickly assessing the situation. The rest stop wasn't crowded, but there were a few people milling about. A family was loading into their minivan, and a trucker stood by his rig smoking a cigarette. None of them seemed to notice what was happening. Jack knew he had to act fast. He reached into his truck, grabbing his phone and his wallet. Then, with steady steps, he approached the girl and the man, his expression calm but firm. "Excuse me," Jack said, his voice steady. "Is everything okay here?" The man stiffened, his hand tightening slightly on the girl's arm. He forced a smile. "Yeah, we're fine. Just taking a break, right, sweetheart?" The girl didn't answer. Her eyes darted to Jack, wide with silent pleading. Jack nodded slowly, pretending to buy the man's story. "Mind if I have a word with you for a second? You look familiar. Were you in the service?" The man blinked, caught off guard. No. Don't know what you're talking about." Jack's smile didn't reach his eyes. Huh. Must have been someone else. He turned his gaze to the girl. "Hey, kiddo. You doing all right?" The man quickly stepped in. "She's fine. She's just tired. We should get going." Jack's calm exterior masked the storm brewing inside him. He glanced at the girl again, his tone softening. "You sure you're okay, sweetheart? You look like you could use some water." The girl hesitated, then gave the smallest shake of her head. It was barely noticeable, but Jack caught it. That was all he needed. Jack's demeanor shifted slightly, his voice taking on a subtle edge. "You know, I think I'll stick around for a bit. Something doesn't feel right here." The man's smile faltered. "Look, buddy, I don't know who you think you are, but this is none of your business." Jack didn't flinch. He took a small step forward, his frame towering over the man. "See? That's where you're wrong. If someone needs help, it's everyone's business, The man's face hardened, and he glanced around nervously. Jack could see the wheels turning in his head. He knew the man was weighing his options, trying to decide if he could bluff his way out or if he needed to run. Jack didn't give him the chance. "Hey!" Jack called out, his voice loud enough to carry across the rest stop. "Can someone give me a hand here?" The family by the minivan turned to look, and the trucker stubbed out his cigarette, stepping closer. Jack kept his eyes on the man, his voice low and firm. "I think you should stay right here until we figure this out." The man's expression darkened, and he let go of the girl's arm. "You don't know what you're talking about. This is my niece." The girl's eyes welled with tears, and she shook her head slightly again. Jack squared his shoulders, ready for whatever came next. In that moment, he knew this wasn't just a random stop. It was a moment that could change everything. The tension was thick as Jack stood his ground. The man's attempt at looking confident was faltering under Jack's unwavering stare. Nearby, the family by the minivan started inching closer, and the trucker was already on his way over. Jack's call for attention was working, but he knew he had to handle this carefully. The man shifted on his feet, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I don't know who you are, but we're leaving," he said, grabbing the girl's arm again. Jack stepped forward, his voice dropping low enough for only the man to hear. "You touch her again, and you'll regret it. I guarantee that." The man froze, sensing the steel behind Jack's words. The girl pulled her arm away slightly, her face filled with fear, but also a glimmer of hope. Jack looked directly at her. "It's okay," he said gently. "You're safe now." The trucker arrived, his bulky frame adding an imposing presence to the scene. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice rough but curious. Jack didn't take his eyes off the man. "I think this young lady needs help, and I think this guy knows he's in trouble." The man's face twisted into anger. "You've got it all wrong. She's my niece. We're traveling together. This guy's just harassing us." Jack turned to the girl. "Is that true? Is he your uncle?" She hesitated, glancing at the man, then at Jack. Finally, she shook her head. "No," she whispered. That was it. The lie was exposed, and the man knew it. His hand twitched like he was considering running, but the trucker stepped closer, crossing his arms. "I wouldn't try anything if I were you," the trucker said. "A lot of eyes are on you right now." Jack nodded, keeping his voice steady. "Why don't you stay put while I call the police? Let's clear this up." The man panicked. "Fine, call them. But this is all a misunderstanding. She's just scared, that's all." Jack didn't respond. He was already dialing 911. The girl, sensing the shift in power, moved a little closer to Jack. He gave her a reassuring nod while he explained the situation to the dispatcher. The man was sweating now, glancing around as if looking for an escape route. By the time the police arrived, a small crowd had gathered. The officers quickly assessed the scene, speaking to Jack, the girl, and the man separately. Jack explained what he had witnessed and pointed out the SOS signal the girl had used. The girl, still trembling, confirmed that she didn't know the man and had been too scared to speak up earlier. The officers didn't waste any time. They placed the man in handcuffs, reading him his rights as they led him to their squad car. He protested loudly, claiming his innocence, but the weight of the evidence against him was clear. As the crowd began to disperse, one of the officers approached Jack and the girl. "We can't thank you enough," he said. "Your quick thinking probably saved her from something terrible." Jack looked at the girl, who was clutching a water bottle one of the officers had given her. "I just did what anyone should do," he said. "Are you okay?" he asked her. She nodded hesitantly. "Thank you," she said softly. "I didn't think anyone would notice." Jack crouched down to her level, his voice gentle. "You did the right thing by signaling. You're brave, and you're safe now." The officer added, "We'll contact her family and make sure she gets home. If there's anything else we need, we'll be in touch." Jack nodded, watching as the girl was escorted to a police car for protection. His heart felt heavy, yet relieved. He had acted on instinct, and it had made all the difference. As Jack got back into his truck and started the engine, he couldn't shake the weight of the moment. He had been in dangerous situations before, but this felt different. It was a reminder that being vigilant could save lives, and that sometimes small actions like noticing a signal or asking a question could change someone's entire future. Driving away from the rest stop, Jack felt a quiet sense of purpose. He didn't need thanks or recognition. All that mattered was that the girl was safe, and the man who tried to harm her was being held accountable. And somewhere, on the road ahead, Jack knew he'd always be ready to step in when someone needed help. Because for people like him, being a hero wasn't about medals or glory. It was about doing what was right, no matter the cost.